Welcome to Crypto Disrupted, a cryptocurrency and blockchain podcast with your hosts, Trent Lipinski and Greg Kerr.
Welcome to Crypto Disrupted. I'm Trent Lipinski, and this is my co-host, Greg. And we've got Justin Ehrenhofer here. He's a moderator from Reddit. He is a moderator of the subreddit Our CryptoCurrency, which now has over 600,000 subscribers. Hey, Justin, how's it going? Can you tell us a bit about what you do and what you're working on?
Yeah, thanks, Trent. So my name is Justin, as I was introduced. I am a senior moderator on the CryptoCurrency subreddit, and I'm also a student at the University of Minnesota. I'm studying finance and management information systems. Beyond that, I spend a lot of time working on cryptocurrency projects, specifically those related to security and privacy.
Very cool. So you've been involved in the cryptocurrency space for some time now. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about, how long you've been doing this, what your favorite cryptocurrencies are, what kind of trends you've been seeing in the community?
Okay, yeah. So I first heard about Bitcoin in 2013 on the Colbert Report, actually. There was a segment with Adam Davidson from NPR, and they're speaking about why this unbacked thing has any value, and that's what drew my attention to it, and I thought it would be cool to try out and mess around with. So I downloaded the full node wallet, like Bitcoin Core, played around with it for a little bit, and was mined for about a week, but did not make anything, and then uninstalled it and forgot about it for about a year. And then later started to pick it up again, took a leisurely pace at learning more about it, and then became much more active in 2015, and then continued with there. As I mentioned, I'm also very interested in privacy technologies, so that drew me directly into the more privacy-focused cryptocurrencies, which I spend a lot of my time contributing towards. So I'm basically involved in a lot of projects that are open source, privacy-focused, and trustless. So that's my position outside of the cryptocurrency moderator subreddit. You'll see me spending most of my time with Manero specifically, but among the cryptocurrency subreddit moderators, each of us has our own coins that we're interested in, and so we just make sure to keep each other in check. That's why we try to make the team as diverse as possible.
And can you kind of explain what Monero is and kind of the difference between it and Bitcoin and like Ethereum and some of the other cryptocurrencies?
Sure. So with Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the vast majority of others, it's a very simple system where you have people, as they transfer funds, it's publicly visible to everyone else that a certain number of funds were sent from one user to another user. And sure, it's pseudonymous. They're random strings that are the addresses. But these are often linked to people. So if Trent, for example, you paid me a tenth of a Bitcoin for something, I would know your wallet address now, and I would know what you received in the past and what you did with the money in the past, or if you use this wallet in the future. And you could trace what I do with this money going into the future. And I think that even if you don't have any necessary concerns over what your privacy is, or even if you don't think privacy is necessarily a big deal, I think it's important for a money system to kind of have this privacy, where like with when you're using cash, you kind of take it for granted that someone can't trace it. And I think with these digital currencies, since it's easy to see this history, when I'm actually receiving money, it's basically my job, if I'm receiving money, to make sure that the money I'm receiving has not been tainted or used illicitly in the past. And I think it's a lot of effort if you put the burden on the receiver to basically prove every time the money they're receiving is legitimate. That's a large burden they shouldn't necessarily have to do. It just makes daily transactions difficult. So that's kind of my perspective. So Monero makes it so that this information for all transactions on the network, not just a select few, but every transaction on Monero hides the sender, receiver, and amount, so that sure, you have a blockchain that is public, but people don't know what to do with the information that's presented on the public ledger.
Got it.
Yeah, that is huge, because now you make a good point, and it's weird to think of these systems that we do take for granted, right? Is this ability to, or even the concept that the value isn't the value if it's been misused in the past. that's an extra layer of accountability that I hadn't even kind of contemplated until you kind of said it that way.
I mean, think you. Many people, have both of you heard of the WannaCry attack, the ransomware attack?
Yep.
So imagine if you were just doing a normal Bitcoin transaction with someone and they tried to give you money from WannaCry. Are you going to accept that? Like, you basically need to check to make sure you're not receiving WannaCry money all the time. And I think that's something most people don't really think about. And I think that's worrisome.
Well, and can you kind of speak, so you're studying information security and you're going into cybersecurity. So can you kind of speak to, what's been happening in the cybersecurity space lately? Just the fact that everyone's been hacked. I've been in the cybersecurity space a little bit myself, and I've been in cloud computing. So, I've been just kind of keeping an eye on what's happening. But I mean, it's crazy the amount of ransomware that's out there now. The phishing attacks that are out there, and then the fact that, everything from pretty much every major healthcare company, Experian, the credit card companies, most banks have pretty much all been hacked in the last couple of years. Any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, cybersecurity is an incredibly important part of really any technical system that you build. And that's part of the reason that cryptocurrencies are so resilient, is that they not only need to protect, they need to protect against attackers constantly, who are constantly attacking these cryptocurrency systems. And if they're not able to withstand against these attacks, then they're just not resilient enough. They're not decentralized enough. You have centralized services. These are sometimes really good at efficiency. Now, granted, you're still making like a honeypot, though, where you have a lot of information or a lot of financial data in one spot. And so you just need to make sure that you're protecting it effectively. And for very sensitive data, we might see that it might not make sense to trust a normal centralized model with this sort of these sort of security implications if past precedent has shown that it's very difficult to do. It might make more sense to use a more decentralized model, even at the cost of efficiency.
Got it. So, you've been now, moderating this subreddit, and, you've got this huge user base that you're working with. How do you guys organize? How do you manage such a large audience?
Yeah, so we've tried a few things, and we've actually expanded our scope a little bit. So in addition to just doubling our subscriber base basically since December, so we've really grown a lot as the interest has grown. But we've also added Discord, which is another communication medium that people can use. And it just takes a lot of work to cover all these bases. And so we have our internal, built-in moderation tools on Reddit. We actually have our own separate subreddit that we use for documenting certain procedures in addition to the normal cryptocurrency subreddit. So us moderators have our own entirely different subreddit. We recently created a meta subreddit in addition, cryptocurrency meta, which is specifically there for other users to either voice complaints, ideally voice suggestions of how they would like to improve the cryptocurrency subreddit. But it allows at least users to have a mechanism to discuss the subreddit without it clogging up news and other important aspects of the actual subreddit itself. Beyond that, we also communicate on Discord, and we're looking at perhaps trying other platforms too. But it really works among these. Typically, though, the formal decisions are all made on the actual admin subreddit, and we'll have discussions regarding those, which are later documented in the admin subreddit or on Discord.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any kind of organizational structure above and beyond that? So you've got these different subreddits that you're using to manage. You've got this meta subreddit. How does the hierarchy work? Can you kind of explain how the hierarchy works on Reddit and, what being a moderator actually means?
So we have, we currently have two different roles within the moderator rank. On the cryptocurrency subreddit themselves, they're often given a certain level of permissions, but on the actual back end, or at least hidden from default view, on the admin subreddit, we have two different layers of moderators. The first layer is for new moderators who have been around for about a month is the average period, but we evaluate these on a case-by-case basis, where those who have been very active and have contributed very quality discussion might be promoted faster than others. But we just use this as a trial period to make sure that people are sticking up to the specific obligations that they have as a moderator. They need to be active, they need to be impartial, they need to be contributing to a lot of the internal discussions that we have and active. And so that two-tier system kind of allows us to have a situation where we can try new moderators and give them experience without like allowing them to make necessarily potentially catastrophic decisions, right? Or if they do make a poor decision, we can step in, revert it, and hopefully de-escalate it from there. Then the second rank, of course, are the more senior moderators. These have been around for some time, have contributed quality discussion. They will be more strategic focused in their view, where instead of, or in addition to moderating the normal subreddit, where they need to do the typical moderator duties of removing bad posts, approving good ones, removing duplicate posts. It's a lot more strategic thinking, where you need to come up with ways to reach out to other subreddits, other community members, really build the cryptocurrency community, because ultimately the cryptocurrency subreddit is there to serve the cryptocurrency community. It tries to be an integral discussion platform for all of the coins. And so we just need to have discussions for how we can really improve the subreddit for people. And that takes into account user feedback, takes into account how we've seen recent manipulation attempts and other issues like that. So that's kind of what happens a little bit behind the scenes. It's not just your normal subreddit system where you can be necessarily just contained to the subreddit page and just moderate that. We have to go a little bit beyond that, since we don't have any formal entity to really relate to. We need to do a lot of the legwork and reach out to a lot of these communities. Some of them might have formal entities, some of them might not really have formal entities. Like, who are you going to reach out to for Bitcoin? You can reach out to the Bitcoin moderators, the subreddit moderators, but that's about it, and doesn't necessarily reflect the whole community either. Like, you have the R Bitcoin versus R BTC thing going on, and then you need to appease them both, right? And so we're kind of in a space where you really need to have a lot of communication, and we've really prioritized our efforts that way.
Very cool.
Hey, Justin. So, you know, I'm 41, so I get all those, or I'm aware of all the millennial kind of like, or anti-millennial kind of propaganda that gets circulated on the internet. And I've always defended. I was like, I don't know, you know, like, I haven't had to work too much with millennials until recently. And I'm sitting there going, but I'm convinced they have tools and organization that are just going to blow our minds. Right. And so when I started seeing blockchain, started seeing the governance systems that are coming out, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a better organization. But now here you are, you're dealing and making up a process and a pattern and combining people and ideas together to quickly and rapidly scale. And you're hundreds of thousands of users and all this information and like a daily influx of different topics. And you're like funneling all this information and then finding out, you know, like from other sources on how to handle and organize yourself. Oh, by the way, you're always being attacked by bots. You know, like you're man, I can't imagine how you triage all this information and go, how much, like, go through your day, if you would, like, on how you handle all those tasks on Reddit. And then you're also in the university as well.
Yeah. So I think the best thing we did was just get quality expertise. So we were able to, one strong advantage we have with cryptocurrencies is there's a lot of genuine interest and a lot of excitement behind the project that would inspire someone to dedicate more time, more resources towards helping a cryptocurrency community than a normal other community. Granted, most of the subreddit communities have a lot of enthusiasm behind them, but I think within cryptocurrencies, it's new and it's unique. And so there's a lot of unusual, like a lot of excitement behind it. And so we have several we have several moderators who on our team who are really good at spotting manipulation. And we've worked with them a lot to devise tools in order to have better protections against manipulation than like the auto moderator functionality can typically provide, and also just even improving our auto moderator functionality. I remember around Christmas, when KuCoin came out with their like referral program, and our subreddit has like a no referral link policy to prevent the entire thing from just being a referral link spam. I spent 6 hours one day just removing and banning people for posting referral links. And you only need to do that once before you realize that we need to have like a bot system that actually goes through and removes these for us. Otherwise, there's no way we can keep up. So this kind of speaks a little bit to the higher level strategic focus, is that we need to stay higher level. We're not going to catch every comment all the time. We're not going to stop every instance of manipulation, but we need to develop tools to look for these certain patterns. So several other moderators have gone through the effort to like graph some of the certain upvotes over time for certain, and it's divided per project, per coin, per time period. And so we're able to look at certain periods or certain posts that stick out as unusual. And then we're able to say, okay, is this a genuine, like large moving piece? Or is this most likely a manipulation attempt? And then also beyond that, just trying to pinpoint where that source of that manipulation attempt is. And so that's kind of the higher level approach. I typically spend several hours a day going, or maybe on average, maybe 1 to 2 hours going through the daily discussion, especially making sure the front page is clean, because that's what most users will see. And that's our highest priority. Like in terms of priority is concerned, it's front page, then daily discussion, and skepticism discussions and others, and then the rest of the posts.
Yeah.
So how do you see the blockchain influencing that rhythm right there that you have? You know, and how do you foresee your job or your role as a Reddit kind of moderator on the blockchain? Or, you know, does it radically change because identities will be harder to falsify and this manipulative behavior will be easier to detect? How do you see that playing out?
To be completely honest, I don't know if I haven't really thought about the moderation element too much. At least like moving that towards like a blockchain sort of element. I think in general, the amount, like even just based off the number of comments alone and the number of users that we have alone, like our subreddit has 3 million page views per day. I think that current blockchain implementations would struggle to keep up with processing that much information. And so that's something that, I mean, I would love to see something in the future, but some advancements with the technology in the future. But if you had it, at least in terms of like a direct sense, like if you had a blockchain with identities and we're trying to reference that, it would be difficult to keep up with the volume.
No, scalability is a major challenge right now with a lot of the blockchain projects. I'm seeing on the periphery, like some of the people that we're talking to on the consulting side, and some of the people we've been talking to with the project that Greg and I have been working on in the renewable energy space. You know, there are solutions coming that are going to be more scalable, but right now, the solutions just aren't there yet, especially in the context of like, you know, being able to have millions upon millions of users. You know, we haven't seen a blockchain aside from Bitcoin really, you know, and a couple others really scale to that kind of volume. And then even so, they're struggling and they're having issues. So, you know, the fees for Bitcoin are extremely high right now. You know, there's talk of the Lightning Network and, you know, side chains and SegWit and all these other different solutions possibly to help make things more scalable. But scalability is a major challenge. So there's going to be, you know, there's definitely going to be something on the proof of stake side. I think, where we're going to see more scalability in future, like second, third generation blockchain projects. But right now, it's just, those implementations are in their infancy. And it'll be it's still going to be a matter of time before someone builds, a Reddit or moderation type tool or community-based site that's blockchain-based, that's able to handle that kind of traffic and volume. There's Steemit, obviously, and DTube and some of those, but even those are a challenge to use, and they have scalability issues still.
Yeah. For those who are familiar with Steemit, they definitely have scalability issues related to their volume. They're nowhere near Reddit in size.
Yeah.
And so at that point, based off how large their blockchain is, from having transactions every time people really do anything on the network, it just causes situations where you basically form centralized models. Sure, anyone could run their version of Steem, right? But it would take a lot of resources to do it. So it's not something a normal person would do. And so at least that's kind of the concern related to scalability, is that you would lose out that ability. And then even just from practical reasons, usually the limiting reactor is like the bandwidth. So everyone talks about transaction size, but once you start processing more than 5 megabits per second of transactions, or if you just keep jumping that even more and more, then people won't be able to keep up on their home networks.
Hey, Justin, real quick. So also the scalability issues is blowing my mind still, that you've grown so big, you're juggling all that growth. Have you noticed any trends in the users? Or is that information kind of, well, no, you're reading through your comments and your discussions every day. Have you noticed any trend through this?
So with every wave of like new users that come in, there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of people that don't know what's going on, and a lot of people trying to learn. And so they often will just jump on certain bandwagons. And the communities that benefit from from that are those that are trying to promote themselves as like the next big thing. I think there's a lot of like too much focus within cryptocurrencies of trying to find the next big coin. And if like you'll have Bitcoin, which is pretty large, you'll have a fork of Bitcoin. Suppose it's exactly the same as Bitcoin, except they have no developers, right? It's smaller. The market cap is $1 million. People will be like, oh, well, it has growth potential, right? It has more potential. They'll just wave off the lack of fundamentals. It's, oh, it has more potential. And so I think that in a situation where you have a lot of people promoting that material, that new users are more likely to be drawn to, at least if they're trying to if they're just on Coinbase, they're going to stick to the big three once they become Coinbase, right? But if they're trying to get involved in the community, there's a good chance that they'll try to be captured by someone that's trying to promote the next big thing, at least until the hype dies down, the price crashes. It's no longer just a perfect story for everyone like it was for most of 2017, where you couldn't really do very wrong because the price was always doing well. And so I think in general, as the price goes up, you have, at least especially in the amount of viewership, the amount of page views goes up a crazy amount, the amount of comments and posts goes up a ridiculous amount. So I think it's definitely correlated to like a price. And so one of our big pushes now is to make sure that we have educational resources. The reason when I first joined the subreddit as a moderator, it was originally to work on the Crypto Wikis project. So we have, for certain coins, stickied at the top in the comment section, a list of like factual information about certain coins, and also like editorials for and against the coin that people can use as a reference. And so we're expanding this further, and we hope that it will help newer users start somewhere, or before they just leap into a discussion, at least they have some reference where they could learn more. You can't force people to learn more, but you just need to make it easier so that hopefully they do.
Okay, I see what you're doing. Yeah, so that you're saying the narrative control works. If people are organized and can promote an idea, you can kind of see the sheep following, and so you're trying to break that down by giving, breaking up the forums by going here. You want to see pro, you want to see against, and then you're using organization to attack that problem.
Yeah, well, we're not necessarily trying to. We're definitely not trying to prevent people from finding new projects or anything. But we just want to make sure that there's at least a little bit of rationale behind people selecting projects, or at least some factual basis behind why they're participating in discussion. It's fine for someone to support a project for any reason, including if it's a purely emotional reason, or if they just like the name, or whatever it might be, right? Like Garlicoin for the win, right? So that's an example where it doesn't necessarily need to have. The community can support something for any reason it wants, but we just want to make sure that people at least have a resource to learn more about it if that's what they want to do, because ultimately the technology is still new, the space is still new, the fundamentals are constantly changing, and most people don't know how to do due diligence. It's really hard to do due diligence on assessing projects, and we don't claim to have an answer for that problem, but we just want to make it easier for people to at least start somewhere and have something.
Can you kind of go into it and explain how crypto kind of has its own language and some of the acronyms and some of the terms and the different memes, because I think a lot of people, when they first jump into crypto and they end up on a subreddit like our CryptoCurrency, they kind of feel like they're missing out on the inside joke. There's all this language, there's terms like FUD, there's hold misspelled, and there's all these different things. Can you kind of explain kind of the meme culture and some of the acronyms and what those mean to the audience, and for someone who's completely new to cryptocurrency and just shows up on this subreddit for the first time today?
Okay, so I guess the most important thing to remember is that these projects typically start from more technical communities, typically online-only communities. And so there's a lot of value in sharing easy content like that. For example, hold misspelled, so hodl, or however you want to pronounce that. That's something it's a really easy phrase for people to rally behind. It can be used in multiple situations where the price is going up, down, whatever. You just shout that out. It's a really easy way for someone to really start off getting involved. So I think that these interesting aspects of it, I mean, they come from, it's an interesting community culture where it's really hard to pinpoint one thing, because each project has their own culture. Bitcoin has their own set of memes. Ethereum has their own set of memes. I'm sure the Ethereum trader subreddit has completely different memes than Ethereum, or completely different talking points that they rally behind, even if they don't have memes allowed on the subreddit itself. But I think it just mostly speaks to just easy content for people to participate with, content that is, and I think it kind of gives people an incentive to want to learn a little bit more about it. Oh, there's this extra culture of people, some way for people to communicate, and it's like playful banter that you just kind of have as you discuss. I guess it's just an easy way to have simple communication. And so, of course, hodl just means hold, just don't sell. It's sometimes used sarcastically, such as the price goes down 90%, I'm still holding, right? And I'm trying to remember the other example you used, Trent.
There's FUD.
FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So that one's interesting. Be careful of that one. Someone could give a very factual argument, and someone will just respond FUD. It's basically the equivalent of fake news. So if someone says fake news, it doesn't mean it's necessarily fake news. It could be, but FUD is basically used interchangeably with fake news. That's kind of like the cryptocurrency equivalent of fake news. And in many cases, it's warranted where people don't know what's going on and people jump to conclusions. And in some cases, you can have researchers that spend months on a project come to a conclusion that this is the worst thing they've ever looked at, and they'll just be FUD. So it works both ways, right? Um,
So you brought up an interesting point with fake news. So what are your thoughts on the mainstream media's coverage of cryptocurrencies? Because I've seen some insane coverage, like, CEOs of banks, like major financial institutions, just spreading nonsense, FUD in this case. So what are your thoughts on that? Have you seen some of those some of that content coming across your subreddit? What does that mean to you?
that's a very interesting case, because I typically trust like mainstream media a lot for my normal news. But with very technical topics, sometimes they're behind a little bit, or sometimes it would just make sense for you just to sit, if they sat down and spoke with someone about it. And I think the big disconnect here, the big reason you're seeing such a disconnect here in some cases, is that they don't have a clear person to sit down with. They don't have a clear person to interview. Sometimes with projects, if it's a company that's issuing a token, they can sit down with the CEO, or they can sit down with the CTO of the project and speak with them, and then those articles are traditionally more accurate. But if you have something like Bitcoin, where you can talk to Coin Center, sure you can talk to someone, but it still creates an odd situation for these media sites, where they would have to go to a source where they normally wouldn't source, like Samsung Galaxy Player on Reddit as a source of something, right? Yeah. So it kind of creates, that's in some ways that's a good thing, because if you've seen some of these cryptocurrency news sites, some of them are terrible. And even among the good websites, I even argue that many of the articles are just terrible too, where they'll just reference something, they'll present it from an angle with the assumption that it will succeed. And so it's almost too much on the other side, where you need these people to come together a little bit and learn. You need them. I would like to see some of the larger, more reputable news organizations spend some time to learn about the technology. But part of the problem is that they typically don't have that technical of an audience. So there are some times where they do a really good job explaining what Bitcoin, what Ethereum, what some of these projects are to people in a way that they would understand it, even if they have no technical experience or they don't know anything about the space to begin with. But there's only so much you can cover if you're always covering like, okay, this is what Bitcoin is, period. You need to have some more, if you want to be referenced a lot within the community, you also need to have much more technical content. And I mean, hopefully that the community is large enough to warrant at least a large enough market for this technical content, so that you have like higher quality technical content, instead of someone publishes a research paper and then you have a crypto news website that's like, we noticed that someone published a paper, isn't this cool, but we're not going to make any analysis of it because we just don't have the resources for it. Yeah. So I think it kind of goes both ways. I saw a really good New York Times article about Bitcoin, and the ultimate big case for the entire article is, yes, the space is driven by greed, but there's a lot of cool stuff behind it, and it kind of went in detail with a lot of these different aspects and why they could be useful. And I think things like that they're like really good investigative journalism. But they're relatively rare, but like I subscribe to The Economist and Bloomberg Business Week, and typically in every issue there's at least a section about cryptocurrency now.
Yeah, I think because I saw it as just kind of intellectually dishonest and lazy when an executive in the finance world just saw the fastest, financial vehicle in human history take off, and they're throwing platitude out, and you're like, wow, like you didn't even read the white, like this is your job, your profession. I can understand if the lay person doesn't pick up, the Bitcoin white paper, but if your job is to advise people to make money, like you might want to at least do a little bit of homework, sit down for an hour and read about it, but even especially before you go before international or national news. But no, man, I was going to say your brilliance comes out in your ability to be really objective on these issues. It's like I'm sitting here as you're speaking, and like there's no real emotion. You're kind of just like laying it out. I'm like, oh, he's an observer. you're observing these rooms and you're just kind of noticing and taking in. And so I was like, wow, that shows a different level of brilliance to kind of keep yourself emotionally out of it and really recount it almost as as factual, right? And so I'm listening to you talk, and I'm like, wow, I wonder if your subreddit, what the relationship between the real market is. Do things happen in your realm that influence the market, or is the market doing stuff that influences your realm, or is it column A and column B? You have this like back and forth between these two things that are, hitting each other,
It's probably 90% or 95% at least, the subreddit being influenced by the market. I think at this point, the subreddit is pretty large. If someone had a very good post, either promoting or providing criticism of a certain coin, that I think that it would have the potential to move a market if the right people saw it. But it's hard to say. Like, for instance, you saw with Verge, which was a heavily shilled coin, and someone published a list of all the IP addresses associated with transactions, and they had constantly advertised as always having this link. And before that was posted, Verge passed Zcash in total valuation, which, regardless of your opinions on Zcash and Verge, I think it's fair to say that Zcash is a much larger team and community behind it than Verge. So that's an example where, and then after that post came out and people, the normal people, or at least the newcomers, realized, oh, wow, I can't just accept this claim at face value because it's false. In that case, then I think things settle down a little bit, where Verge is back down in the list a little bit more, and people are a little bit more, at least a little bit more sane in how they approach this problem. But I think with most coins, you have a lot of hype where something gets really pumped before it necessarily gets a lot of criticism that is needed, and so it just kind of gets pumped up. And I didn't really answer a good question there, so I apologize. But
no. And here's the funny thing, and this is great because you're true to form. Of course, your answer is, I'm trying to build something that's transparent to allow the merit of the content to be the issue and not the medium itself. So of course, gosh, should have predicted that. He's going to say, no, I have no influence, or not me yourself, but your efforts are reflecting the reality, not dictating the reality. And you're doing it, sounds like by organization, is what you're trying to do, is make yourself irrelevant and allow the ideas to flow and be categorized and move the medium out of it.
It's interesting because many people would think, well, the best thing for you to do in a situation where you have a subreddit, if you want free-flowing ideas, is just to sit back, like, the laissez-faire type approach to the subreddit. Don't do anything. Only remove what's absolutely necessary. But that's not really quite fair either, because some communities are a lot larger than others. And so if we did not do anything, then the cryptocurrency subreddit would be completely overrun by the large, any of the large communities out there, where they would control vast, like a substantial amount of the content. And so we wanted to prevent that also. So we have rules restricting the number of posts about certain projects on the front page and several other small things like that, in order to make sure that one project doesn't contain the entire subreddit. So we definitely still have some rules, but in my opinion, and I think of most of the subscribers' opinions on our subreddit, that these rules allow for people to have this better free-flowing conversation, to actually have some of these thoughts heard, so you're not just seeing memes all the time. We have a limit on the number of memes on the front page, and we've also even discussed back and forth whether we should just move those entirely to a different subreddit. We've had a lot of those discussions. Ultimately, it's whatever helps the cryptocurrency community the most, because again, we basically feel like we owe it to the community to make this a good quality discussion place. But it's a lot of those decisions going back and forth. Memes are helpful, they're good in some ways, right? But do you only want memes? Where do you draw the line? And it's hard to figure that out.
Yeah, you're combating, I guess there's a term called tyranny of the masses, and you're trying to combat that by subbing it out or organizing it in such a way that you can kind of funnel things and put that type of limit on there. Yeah, that's that also, I guess the controversy now, yesterday Medium started restricting certain content from conservative contributors. So
Mm.
you kind of say where in one hand it's like they're trying to combat fake news, and then on the other it turns into censorship. But I like how your approach is. It's more about organization, and then all the content can stay. It's just categorized, and you kind of know where you're kind of seeing what you're kind of seeing. If it's a negative article about some subtopic, then you know where to find it, and then you can kind of better filter. That's an interesting concept.
Well, and the users can vote too. So that's kind of the beauty of Reddit, is there is democracy built into it. So, they're creating this structure and they're creating these rules that, kind of govern the community. But at the same time, it's the users and that participation from the users themselves, where they're upvoting and downvoting content. So, sometimes it's the users who actually spot the bad information and just downvote it into oblivion. And then that's what tips off the moderator that, hey, there's something going on here. So sometimes it's just, wars between communities, or, it's personal or whatever. But in most of the cases, they've identified spam, or they've identified a bot or a shill or whatever you want to call them. So, in a lot of cases, it's the community that actually does some of that legwork as well.
Yeah, we highly encourage all subscribers to hit that report button for any instance where it needs to be reported. It's the fastest way we can find stuff.
Awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Not particularly. Just if you have any concerns, criticisms, comments, whatever, try to move those to the cryptocurrency meta subreddit, so that if someone watches this video is probably fine for cryptocurrency. But if someone was like, well, I propose a rule change, or the subscribers, they removed, or the moderators removed my comment, and here's proof that they're all bought off by, big insert coin here, right? So just restrict those to cryptocurrency meta so we can make a better experience for everyone. That's really all we're trying to do, is just make it better for everyone else. We're trying to be as transparent as possible. Our mod logs are open for everyone to audit if they really feel that there's an issue. People can see and make their case, and we can find ways to improve. But really, the best way is just us communicating effectively with each other. We're trying to communicate effectively with other communities so they understand what our rules are, and making sure that they're not accidentally violating them, so that we're staying fair and making sure it's fair for everyone in the community. That's really our ultimate goal. And our job as moderators is just to work with the community to make sure that happens.
All right. Well, thanks for what you do. Really appreciate it. And it's a refreshing approach to, sharing ideas, and totally counterculture to some of the mainstream stuff. So we really appreciate your work, and it's good to see a brilliant mind working. So thank you.
No, thanks so much for offering to have me on here. I saw this, and we don't get too many offers to have a representative from the subreddit come speak about stuff. So that was unique.
Yeah, no, I thought it would be cool because, you're at the front lines of what's happening in the cryptocurrency space. So, it's basically your job to know what's happening. So you're in a very unique position that most people, don't get to experience. So I thought it'd be really cool to have you on, and this has been an amazing episode. So thank you for coming on. And where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter, J Ehrenhofer, EHRENHOFER. That's probably the best way. I'm also on LinkedIn with my name, Justin Ehrenhofer. You can find me there too. But Twitter's probably the best.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Yep. Thanks so much, Greg and Trent.
Yep.